Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer Quick Match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as the Dwarves against the Bretonnian Vampires of Moose-ilon, led by Jerry the Mouse on the map Lightsigger Ford. So let's break things down. So right off the bat you can see that I brought bolt throwers in this comp, and also brought out Runelord. I wanted to give it a shot. I've been relying on the vanilla Dwarf Lord, or sometimes some of the fancier Dwarf Lords, mostly, but the legendary lords. But I wanted to give it a shot to the Runelord. I've heard a lot of good things about him, and he is kind of a meta pick right now, so I wanted to try him out. So I brought him in. Was a game against Vampire Count, so I brought most of his runes, except his one of his additional rune he can pick for to make himself unbreakable. I didn't decide to bring that here, but I do of course have Locus of Power to improve magic resistance for all my troops. Vampires do tend to use a lot of magic, so I figured that would be useful. Also brought Rune of Hearth and Home, which gives all nearby allies immunity to psychology, as well as Stand Your Ground, of course, Master Rune of Oath and Steel, Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and Master Rune of Negation, which makes him a very strong support lord. Unfortunately, his melee stats are somewhat crap. His defense and melee attack are okay, but his weapon strength is atrocious. His armor is very high though, and his HP pool is high, so hopefully he'll be pretty tanky. Alongside him, I did bring a single Thane, stripped down to basically the bare basics, but he is just here to give me a little bit of extra tankiness, a little bit of extra damage output in the front line. And I've got a pretty spread out front line. In the center here, I do have Gremlings Ironbreakers, kind of anchoring everything, ready to throw satchel charges over the heads of the Dwarf Warriors in front of them. And then over here on the left, I do have the Grumbling Guard to provide that AoE vigor buff, as well as dishing out some extra armor piercing, and just being a stiff, good line holding unit. My front line is composed mostly of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, which you can see staggered out here. This was to preempt any Winds of Deaths, which my opponent might try to cast because he was playing Vampire Counts, and you never know. That is a pretty popular thing to do with Vampire Counts. And then 2 units of Miners with Blasting Charges on the flanks here. And in the very back, I do have Dragonback Slayers just to flex in and help support when needed. Of course, Miners with Blasting Charges can do a lot of work against Undead, especially because of their type formations. The Blasting Charges can really mess them up. And Miners do dish out a little bit of armor piercing damage, and given that Undead usually don't have the best melee stats, they could perform fairly decently with their high armor and armor piercing. And then my firing line, which is kind of spread out. I did position, you can see this bolt thrower a little off to the side. I have 2 bolt throwers to bring some anti-large and armor piercing to the field, anti-large armor piercing with decent range to the field. And then in the center, or spread out a little closer, I do have 3 units of Thunderers, just to provide some more close-in support and more flexible firepower. So yeah, closing this into full speed here while I go over my opponent's build. My opponent did bring a unit of Black Knights, which is trying to flank out here on the side, as well as a Black Coach on the other flank, trying to flank over there. But the core of his army is centered around the Red Duke, who is hovering around here somewhere. There we go, on his Hellsteed, as well as a single corpse guard over here in the center with Unholy Lodestone to provide Vigor Mortis as well as regen for all nearby units. The heart of his army is a trio of Graveguard with great weapons. These guys, of course, will do very well, especially when backed by the Vigor Mortis from the engine, not from the engine, from the corpse guard, as well as unit of Cryptors just to dish out some additional melee hurt. A whole bunch of zombies, including a Scythe there to absorb my fire, and we do have a Vargulf over here to disrupt my formations, cause some armor piercing damage, and kind of dive in, be tanky, and be a annoying nuisance in my backline. Finally, a unit of Cairn Wraiths. These aren't the worst of picks against dwarves because dwarves don't have that much magic damage, and these guys do dish out armor piercing. So despite the fact that it's magical armor piercing, they can still do quite a bit of hurt. They do cause terror, which could be a problem for my dwarf warriors, and they have very high physical resistance, so my troops will simply not be able to do very much to them. Over here, though, you can see my bolt thrower has been sniping away at the Black Knights. Already picked off a few models. The bolt thrower is actually a decent artillery piece against these sorts of units, because it fires fairly quickly. It did finally get a true armor piercing buff. Now it actually does armor piercing. It's a very accurate artillery piece, and it can pick off entire models, so it can quickly reduce units such as Black Knights to a more manageable size. You can see another bolt goes down there, knocks off 2 models, and this bolt thrower is just kind of picking these guys apart pretty effectively. So they're already down about 33% of their HP. Where Thunders do fire into the Fellbats, who do still dive in. Nonetheless, I do have the Dragonback Slayers, who are here ready to shut down the cavalry, so they're going to move in, wipe these bats out pretty quickly. These other bats, though, going in against my Thunders, you can see my bolt thrower firing into the Graveguard with great weapons. Unfortunately, I didn't notice this Vargulf, and I wasn't able to pivot in time. A volley of Thunder fire does go into the Red Duke here, and these bats are practically wiped out. You can see the Black Knights are almost on top of my artillery park. So I do start shifting the Slayers over, figuring my Thunderers can mop up the rest of these bats, even as they do open up on this Vargulf, who is now tying down my miners with blasting charges. The Black Knights do get on top of my Bolt Thrower, but the Dragonback Slayers on top of them, and the Black Knights want none of that. The Black Knights are a very low-end cavalry unit. Miners are trying to tie down this Black Coach, doing an okay job of it. The Thunderers are zoning away the Red Duke. I did manage to hold fire and make sure that blasting charges, with the exception of a few here on the Norglemmings, did not get wasted on the Tithe or these low-end skeleton units. Shortly there will be blasting charges going to the poor Graveguard. Blasting charges will do some friendly fire, but in general I just need to level that Graveguard as quick as I can. Over here the Vargulf is diving into my backline, going after my Thunderers, which is why I'm sending the Thane to shut it down. This bolt Thrower does need to be remanned, and you can see the crews heading back to it. In the meantime, the Slayers did actually get distracted chasing the Black Knights. I forgot to bring him back, so I'm only now pulling him back into the fray. You can see that the Vargulf is taking quite a bit of a beating. Unfortunately, it does have regen, so it's not going to go down that easily. Zombies have gone down on my Thunders, but you can see the Thunders are kind of ignoring him a little bit and firing into this Black Coach and whittling it down. And the Cairn Wraith have busted through the flank. They've terrorized my miners. I do believe they actually got terror routed. Oh no, they just got normal routed. The Black Coach has gone into my Bolt Thrower and is now messing it up again. So the crew is surrounding it, trying to do a little bit of damage to it. These zombies in the meantime are just pushing in and kind of trying to swamp my whole front line. The front line is going reasonably well. The Graveguard is getting chopped through. In some places they're pushing through against the Dwarf Warriors. Unfortunately I didn't commit the Rumbling Guard here, and that was a huge mistake on my part. I should have definitely pushed him in and had him chop up this Graveguard with great weapons. And my right flank completely gave way, and the Graveguard are now in amongst my troops. The Norglemmings Ironbreakers are kind of the last line of defense here, and they're holding in from all sides. Over here, the Runelord is trying to mop up some of these zombies. My opponent is doing a good job casting zombies all over the place, just shutting down my Thunders and ruining my backline. Though you can see some of these units have already gained some ranks, some chevrons. These Black Knights are getting torn up. Bolt Thrower has been routed off. This other Bolt Thrower on the right flank here is being slaughtered to man by the annoying Black Coach, which I'm not able to shut down. I do cast a... I do believe I'll shortly cast a Rune of Wrath and Ruin upon these Cairn Wraiths, and that should... and that will start dropping them pretty effectively on them as far as their HP is concerned. Over here though, the Thane is in the fight, trying to fight off the Vargulf. In the meantime, I still haven't actually committed the Grumbling Guard, which is a huge mistake on my part. The Norglemmings Ironbreakers over here are taking a huge beating, doing their best to just hold the line. These guys have very high melee defense, so they will do okay against, say, Vargulf. I still haven't managed to get that cast off of the Wrath and Ruin. I don't believe it's charged yet, but I will eventually. Black Coach is occasionally taking some fire, but right now it's kind of running amok in my backline. You can see the Thunders have turned around and firing at these Black Knights, just trying to put them down for once and for all. Over here, the Red Duke does dive into my backline, going after these Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, but they do not rout. They're stinging in the fight, and they're trying to lay the smack down on him. Over here in the meantime, Rune of Wrath and Ruin has gone down on the Cairn Wraith, and the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin does a lot of hurt. Unfortunately, my opponent does have his Corpse Cart nearby, and is providing these guys with a bit of regen, and he just now cast a Invocation of the Heck on him. Zombies tying down the Thunders, they're not doing very much damage to him. And now my miners are coming back. They will start lobbing explosives into this Graveyard with great weapons and just trying to mop them up in general. Over here, my Runelord is being focused, but he has very high melee defense, and the Vargulf doesn't have the highest melee attacks, honestly, so it's going to struggle a bit against the Runelord at actually punching through and hitting him. The zombies, unfortunately, are tying me down very effectively. You can see the Black Knights will shortly die of crumbling. Dragonback Slayers are trying to do their best to flex around. I definitely went a little light on the Dragonback Slayers, and I do believe I'm kind of paying for it here. Unfortunately, I do not notice these units over here, and I don't pull them back in quite in time, or as soon as I should have. Over here, the Graveguard is getting beaten up by the Grumbling Guard. In the center, the Norglemmings Ironbreakers are coming on top. Norglemmings Ironbreakers, in spite of the fact that they're not anti-heavy infantry, they will actually win out against a lot of different... Ironbreakers in general actually went out against a lot of dedicated anti-armor infantry. For example, vanilla Ironbreakers will actually beat Chosen with normal Chosen, in spite of being significantly cheaper, just because of their blasting charges, as long as they get the blasting charges off. So you can see they're kind of dishing out to these guys. Over here, Runelord is doing okay, fighting this Black Coach. My opponent is trying to just swamp these Thunders, but the fact that the zombies are there are probably protecting the Thunders a bit, because the zombies aren't doing very much, but it's protecting the Thunders from fire. Over here, the Cairn Wraiths are doing some immense work. These guys did get hit by that Invocation of Neg, which means they're pretty healthy right now, and my Thunders aren't really doing much to them. Trying to get a little bit of a view here, how much regen they still have. They don't have very much left as far as their healing cap goes. So if I can hit them with more Rune of Wrath and Ruin, they will definitely go down. Over here, I'm finally getting a pincer in on these Graveguard. You can see these miners pushing in. Thunders aren't routing because they are dwarves, and dwarves of course fight to the very last. They fight to the bitter end. The Runelord is taking a bit of a beating now. The Thane is in there though, helping him out. And you can see kind of my opponent's army is kind of getting mopped up slowly but surely. We're pushing the miners in and the Dwarf Warriors. My opponent's down to really his Vargulf, this Corpse Cart, which I still haven't managed to kill. Black Coach was a big problem because I'm not really able to shut it down. And finally, he does have the Red Duke over here, who's just flying around being a bit of a pain. But he is very low on HP, and I'm trying to get visual on him. finally stops. I don't know how much he has, how much until his healing cap. He's actually not at all close to his healing cap. So he does cast some zombies behind me, but now my Thunderers are getting into position, and they're going to open fire on him. And Thunderers, of course, do dish out quite a bit of hurt, and I've got 2 ranks of them, so if he decides to die this front row, the second row will back him up. And you can see the red dude goes down very, very quickly. He's dropped down to 150 HP. He's in critical binding. He's definitely falling apart. This Black Coach, though, just doing quite a bit of work. You can see the red dude trying to take off here. He has popped Foe Seeker just to speed himself away, but it's not going to be enough. The second row of Thunderers, which is just barely on the fringe there, it does manage to clip him a few times and knocks him off his horse, so down he goes. Now the Runelord is slugging out with the Vargulf. Over here the Black Coach is getting a bit bogged down and beaten down on by the good old Dragonback Slayers. These zombies still need to be mopped up, but at this point I can just kind of leave them be and push and try to just blob around this corpse cart. And did I say Black Coach? This is Corpse Cart. And then trying to focus out the Vargulf in these last 2 vestiges. These Grave Guard are still very sturdy. But fortunately I do still have the Grumbling Guard, who are pretty healthy and of course pretty fresh, so they'll do well. Black Coach over here does kind of rampage through my Thunderers. You can see my Bolt Thrower crew is manning the Bolt Throwers. There's actually only 5 of them left, so I'm not entirely sure how many guns or how many pieces they can man. But they are going to shortly start sniping away at the Vargulf, who has hit his healing cap. It's definitely been a very attrition-heavy game. You can see that with the fact that these guys have hit their healing cap. And I can see the bolts going in against the Black Coach. And these guys are starting to crumble. Their leadership is very low. They're surrounded from all sides. You can see the Thunder fire from our recovered Thunders. My opponent went very zombie-heavy. The zombies, while they definitely tied down the Thunders, they also weren't able to put them down. And now the Thunders are back with a vengeance and just raining death and destruction on them from afar. Vargulf, and now my opponent's army does finally disintegrate. So definitely, you can see my Thane almost died there. So definitely a very close game, definitely a very tight match. I made several mistakes. Most importantly, I didn't commit my Grumbling Guard, and until it was really pretty late in the match. That was definitely a big mistake. My opponent committed a lot of money into zombies. 250 for the Tithe, 450 for these 3 units, so about 700 on just zombies. I'm not entirely sure they were worth it, because they didn't really dish out. He ended up casting lots of zombies anyway, and the zombies didn't really end up dishing out that much hurt. You might have been better off bringing some sort of a different unit. Maybe stripping off some spells and bringing Cryptars or something along those lines. Zombies were definitely a big nuisance. My Thunderers struggled to deal with all of them because there was just so many of them. But at the same time, the zombies were not able to really secure the kills that were kind of needed. Corpse Cart was a very good support tool. The Black Coach, of course, a nuisance. As usual, dwarves have huge issues shutting down chariots, so that performed rather well. The Black Knights didn't get too much done. They actually got sniped down pretty effectively by the Bolt Thrower. The Bolt Throwers, I wasn't that happy with their performance, but they definitely did an okay job of shutting down, or trying to shut down my opponent's Black Knights and kind of forcing him to make a move against them. Bolt Throwers have pretty good rate of fire. They have anti-large, and they're dirt cheap. They only cost 550, so they're not a bad unit for the cost. Norglemling's Ironbreakers were worth their weight in gold. Thane and Runelord actually did surprising amounts of work. The Runelord with the Runes of Wrath and Ruin definitely helped destroy the Cairn Race, who would have otherwise been a nightmare for me. Dwarves don't really have much in the way of magic options. You have the Runes of Wrath and Ruin on the Runesmiths, and then you have the Picate Guard, the Regiment of Renowned Hammers, and I do believe that is it for the dwarves as far as their magic out damage is concerned, which is a kind of a major issue for them. It means that Cairn Race, while they certainly don't do good damage to the dwarves, because they themselves do magic damage, which means it's 25% mitigated against dwarves. It's still armor piercing, it's still going through a decent amount of the time, and the Cairn Race are basically immune to a lot of or near immune to a lot of what the dwarves can throw back at them. So definitely interesting. The Grave Guard performed rather well, at least for the most part. Thunder's actually gained some chevrons. They're beating up on the zombies, I think, for the most part. The Slayers, a lot of this was zombies, so it's important to keep that in mind. But yeah, and you can see the miners even did okay. They were helping mop up those zombies and that sort of stuff. So they were doing an okay job there. So definitely a good game to Jerry Mouse. Definitely had a lot of fun there. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about Quick Match, or any recommendations for what builds you'd like to see or units you'd like to see demonstrated, be sure to post those down in the comment section, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.